A video game can live or die on the popularity of its hero, and once their design is set in stone, it can be pretty risky to tinker around with it. In some instances, it enhances the player's agency, and in others, it proves divisive with the fan base. Spoiler alerts are in full effect because I'm Sai for WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 video game hero transformations you didn't see coming. Number 10. Wanda, Shadow of the Colossus. Wanda, the protagonist of Shadow of the Colossus, is a young man who makes a deal with the mysterious entity Dormin to defeat 16 Colossi in order to resurrect a girl named Mono. At the very end of the game though, once the Colossi have all been defeated, Wanda learns that Dormin wasn't being totally honest with him, and completing the task has only freed Dormin from his imprisonment. At this moment, Wanda is possessed by Dormin, his skin becoming pale, his eyes glowing silver, and horns sprouting from his head. Dormin eventually transforms Wanda into a gigantic shadowy figure, which is promptly defeated by Lord Emon's men. It doesn't end there though. Wanda is then transformed again, this time seemingly reincarnated as an infant boy with small horns on his head, who is then cared for by a newly awoken Mono. Even with the game subtly changing Wanda's appearance throughout the story, with dirtier clothes, paler skin, darker hair and so on, who could have ever predicted that by the game's end he'd turn into a shadow giant and then a baby? Madness. Beautiful madness. Number 9. BJ Blazkowicz, Wolfenstein 2 The New Colossus. Wolfenstein 2 The New Colossus features one of the series' all-time most shocking moments when halfway through the game, iconic protagonist BJ Blazkowicz is decapitated by villain Frau Engel at the Lincoln Memorial in front of a televised audience of millions. But rather than offer up a surprise protagonist switcheroo, we continue to play as Blazkowicz, whose head is recovered by a resistance group, the Kreisau Circle, and surgically grafted onto a bioengineered Nazi super soldier's body by scientist Set Roth. Beyond offering some clear physical advantages to BJ, such as doubling his health back to 100 HP, the body can also be fitted with contraptions which allow BJ to jump higher, squeeze through gaps, move silently, and so on. Basically, in death, BJ only became a more efficient Nazi killer, and though by outward appearances he's not much different to his pre-execution self, that metallic neck seam says all that needs to be said, really. Number 8. Liu Kang, Mortal Kombat Deception. Mortal Kombat is such a fundamentally ridiculous franchise that there's very little fans wouldn't at least try to accept, but that doesn't make zombie Liu Kang any less weird. Liu Kang is of course the series' de facto protagonist, a badass martial artist whose design has been near enough set in stone since the franchise's inception. But that all changed when Kang had his neck snapped by Shang Tsung at the start of 2002's Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, making this the first game in the series where he wasn't a playable character. Kang naturally didn't stay dead for long though, and in follow-up Mortal Kombat Deception he was resurrected as a murderous zombie, complete with deathly grey skin, decaying wounds and chains around his wrists. Amusingly, zombie Liu Kang is also a playable character, though his soul eventually regains control of his body in the next game, Mortal Kombat Armageddon, effectively restoring the status quo. Given how sacrosanct a character Kang is among Mortal Kombat fans, it was pretty bold to give him an undead makeover, albeit only a temporary one. Number 7. The Boy, Inside. Inside is a mesmerising and unforgettable experience from start to finish, and especially to finish. The bulk of the game sees players controlling an unnamed boy as he scales an oppressive dystopian landscape and attempts to avoid death's cruel clutches. But he certainly gets far more than he bargained for at game's end when he comes face to face with the Huddle, a giant fleshy blob that appears to be a crude experimental mass of human bodies per the various limbs sticking out. At this moment, the boy is pulled into the Huddle and becomes part of it, seemingly forever. The player then takes control of the Huddle as it stages an insane escape from the lab before coming to settle at a sunny coastline. One can only begin to imagine what the hell was going through the boy's head once he was dragged into the Huddle. We can see that he's been transformed physically, but what becomes of his consciousness? Actually, come to think of it, I might not want to know. Number 6. Abby, The Last of Us Part 2. Now, it's fair to say that not everyone will consider The Last of Us Part 2's Abby to be a hero, quite the opposite in fact, but given her understandable motives for seeking revenge against Joel and where she ultimately ends up, she's really no less of a hero than Ellie. Abby's most immediately distinctive feature is her muscular build, ensuring she's a major physical force to be reckoned with throughout the game compared to protagonist Ellie. But that all changes at game's end when Abby is captured by the Rattlers and kept as a slave. When Ellie finally tracks her down, Abby now looks markedly different. She's comparatively emaciated, her body is badly bruised from torture, and her long hair has been shaved. It's a drastic and shocking transformation, though given that Abby ends up living to fight another day, one suspects that she probably got back to her swole prior self soon enough. Number 5. Steve Burnside, Resident Evil Code Veronica. Criminally underappreciated spin-off Resident Evil Code Veronica introduces fans to Steve Burnside, an inmate imprisoned on Rockfort Island alongside Claire Redfield. Though Burnside's presence in the game is relatively divisive per his not great voice acting and rushed, ham-fisted romance with Claire, he's an objectively heroic character and one whose arc doesn't go where anybody expected. Even if you predicted that Steve would end up sacrificing himself to save Claire, did anyone see things going this way? When the pair are separated mid-game, Steve is infected with the Veronica virus, and when Claire attempts to rescue him, he mutates into a grotesque tyrant-like creature. A revolting shadow of his former self, Steve attempts to kill Claire before his inner humanity prevails and thinks better of it, but Steve is sadly mortally wounded by one of Alexia Ashford's tentacles in the process. As a silver lining, he at least turns back into his regular human form in his final moments, giving him precious seconds to say farewell to Claire and, of course, melodramatically declare his undying love for her. Ugh. Number 4. Lizbert, Bugsnax. Though PS5 launch title Bugsnax was marketed as a cute adventure game set on a mysterious island filled with adorable bug food creatures, many suspected that Sony was deliberately concealing a far darker component to the story. And that they certainly were, given the outright divergence into body horror territory in the final stretch, when it's revealed that the Bugsnax are actually parasites who eventually transform anyone who consumes enough of them into Bugsnax themselves. This is revealed by Lizbert, a journalist who has vanished on the island at the start of the story, and who at game's end is revealed to have been transformed into a gigantic spider-like Bugsnax monster. Lizbert isn't a villain though, quite the opposite. In fact, Lizbert has been actually trying to keep the Bugsnax in check by functioning as their queen, and players who manage to save all the Grumpuses at the end will see Lizbert mercifully transformed back into her regular self. Number 3. Raiden and Old Snake, Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots. Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots boasted 2 surprise hero transformations for the price of 1. Most unexpectedly, there's Raiden, the wildly divisive protagonist of MGS2, who's replacing Solid Snake in that game made him a fanbase punching bag for years. But when he returned in the 4th game, Raiden was no longer a goofy, lanky twerp in a slinky sneaking suit. He'd become a badass cyborg ninja who believes he belongs on the battlefield. Given the supreme amount of ass Raiden kicks in the game, it was most certainly a glow-up in the eyes of just about every fan. Conversely, there's Solid Snake, whose appearance is drastically altered in this game as the cloning process that created him has accelerated his aging, causing him to look considerably older and appear more physically weak than his actual numerical age, and so Solid Snake became Old Snake. Nobody could have expected either of these transformations following Metal Gear Solid 2, but such is Hideo Kojima's brilliantly unhinged genius. Number 2. Dante, Devil May Cry. Devil May Cry's Dante has changed up his look many times throughout the series, occasionally in ways that absolutely enraged the fanbase, though the very first game also offered up a genuinely unexpected transformation few could have entirely predicted. Protagonist Dante's physical appearance is incredibly distinctive and attention-grabbing, best defined by his silver-white hair and red duster. It's all pretty typical of an action game hero, cool-looking and appealing to teenagers when plastered on a game box. But before long, you're able to try out Dante's awesome Devil Trigger ability, whereby he can channel a demon, either Alistair, Ifrit or Spada, to temporarily take on their more powerful form. No matter which form Dante takes, he looks nothing like himself, gone as the silken white hair in favour of a more monstrously badass facade that's capable of wrecking most of your enemies in record time. Devil Trigger has of course become a staple for the franchise ever since, so while the immediate surprise might be gone, the transformations are still pretty damn jaw-dropping every time. Number 1. Ersted, Live Alive. Live Alive touts a rare case of a playable hero who isn't transformed into a more kick-ass version of themselves, but actually a villain. The villain, in fact. Through the game's 9 chapters, players will take control of 8 different heroes, and in the climactic Middle Ages chapter, you'll play as the Knight Ersted. Though Ersted starts out as a pretty standard RPG protagonist, by the end of this chapter he's tricked into killing his kingdom's king and rendered a pariah by its people. Overcome with despair, Ersted then transforms into the new Lord of Dark, Odio, a shadowy entity who couldn't look much less like Ersted's original appearance. In the final chapter, if players choose to play any character other than Ersted, they'll engage him in a boss battle, where Odio will reveal several grotesque forms, all a horrific leap from Orsted's initial design. In the game's best ending, he'll at least turn back into Orsted after being defeated and before dying, so that's something, I suppose? And that's the list. Let us know what you thought of this video down in the comments below. Which of these transformations did you like the most and which did you dislike the most? And of course, let us know of any others that we missed. Make sure you like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe and hit that notification bell, and visit WhatCulture.com for more content like this. I've been Cy for WhatCulture, and have a good week.